in London today, the Routemaster is the best-loved bus, even after 20 years on the road. Its spirit reflected in the Flanders and Swan classic.
Along the Queensbridge Highway, I drive my merry load at 20 miles per hour in the middle of the road. We like to drive in convoys, we're most gregarious. The big six-wheeler, scarlet painted London Transport, diesel engine, 97 horsepower omnibus.
Hold very tight, please. These are today's buses. Two rival super buses for the 80s. They look very similar. Both cost between £55,000 and £60,000, and both are more sophisticated than any double-decker ever. On my right, the Leyland Titan. On my left, the Metro Camel Wayman Metro bus. These two vehicles are now fighting it out for a share of the home market. A market getting forever smaller as more and more of us decide we'd really rather go by car. But at the same time, the rest of the world, which up to now has never been turned on by double-deckers, is beginning to grasp the idea. Just as the British market is starting to get smaller, the world market is starting to open up. But are we making the right sort of double-deckers? These new vehicles are both expensive to buy and expensive to maintain. The rest of the world, perhaps, not to mention one or two operators of our own, might like something a little simpler. In this edition of The Risk Business, we're going to be examining the new super buses, the foreign countries who might want to buy them, and the alarming possibility that the high streets of Britain itself might be facing an invasion by other people's double-decker buses.
But people waiting in the queues can have little idea of the part they play in the jigsaw of problems facing the bus industry. They just want to know if their bus will turn up on time, and past experience gives them little confidence.
There's a reduced service on the 55 bus route between Walthamstow and Waterloo, and you can still expect delays on buses in the Kensington area.
Full news on bus cancellations in a moment.
Bus route 259 is again reduced this morning between Lower Edmonton and Holborn Circus.
London's bus service has become a political hot potato, the stuff of elections. And in country areas, services are being cut back, while in all cities, traffic jams, breakdowns and staff shortages lead to regular frustrations. Ever waited for a bus, only to find a whole bunch of them travelling in convoy? Or waited for a bus, and then discovered it's full up, so you have to wait all over again? Or waited for a bus which breaks down on arrival, leaving you to find another? Or maybe you've given up going by bus at all. It's not just an impression, it's a fact. Modern buses are less reliable. As the designs become more sophisticated and complicated, they've become more prone to breakdown and less easy to maintain. There's just more to go wrong. And every time a bus breaks down, the queues get longer and the operating costs increase. Someone's got to pay, so the fares go up. For many other reasons too, fewer people are using buses. In South Yorkshire, an enormous subsidy of fares has attracted new passengers, but in the rest of the country, there's a vicious circle of people ignoring buses, causing the service to deteriorate, so that more people choose to travel by car instead. All at a time when rising fuel costs should make public transport more attractive. Instead, the bus market is contracting, and with fewer buses on the roads, passengers are having to pay higher fares. It sounds illogical, but on some routes, it's now more expensive to ride a mile on a bus than it is to fly a mile in Concorde. Despite those high costs, thousands of people have to ride on London buses every day, often on Routemasters like these, still the mainstay of London transport, the biggest urban passenger transport service in the world. Their characteristic front engines and open platforms are famous worldwide. Old-fashioned with their two-man crews perhaps, but their drivers say they cope well with the punishing routes in our capital city, with all the stops and starts, turns of wheel and applications of the brakes.
the Routemaster bus. It's a very light vehicle made of alloy, and that combined with the general efficiency of the vehicle means that it is one of the most fuel efficient land transport vehicles ever invented in terms of its passenger carrying capacity. And that was said by the GLC, not by London Transport.
Open platform double-deckers, like London's Routemaster, were good workhorses. They could be overhauled again and again. But they lost out. A government scheme to subsidise the industry secured the future of a different breed of buses for Britain's roads. To understand why, you've got to go back 12 years, to the time the bus grant was first introduced to help struggling operators buy new buses, like this one, Leyland's Fleet Line. And the aim of the grant was not only to boost declining sales, but also to standardise design. The grant only applied to modern buses that had to have doors for safety instead of an open platform and space for the driver to take the fares, because one-man operation would lead to increased productivity, which explains why the new buses had to have their engines at the back.
It all sounds a very good idea, but it's hardly been an unqualified success. Today, London Transport is having to recycle part of its old Routemaster fleet. By the time they reach the end of their second life, some of those vehicles will be 30 years old. Whilst at the same time, it's paying a scrapyard in the north of England to smash up its fleet lines. Some of those buses are just 7 years old.
At the time the bus grant was introduced, Leyland had the monopoly of double-deckers which qualified for financial help. So if an operator wanted to take advantage of that very tempting 50% subsidy, choice of manufacturer was limited. It had to be Leyland. Since London bought the Fleet Line from Leyland, over 200 have already gone for scrap. The rest of the fleet are being sold off prematurely to other operators who find this type of bus more appropriate. So what went wrong in London with this first generation of one-man buses?
It's a vehicle not designed specifically for London's arduous traffic and operating conditions. There were some design faults in the early days. The gearbox, for instance, gave us tremendous problems in the first 2 or 3 years. Gearboxes were failing after only a few weeks or a month or two. Well, we've largely solved that problem now. The engine, which is at the rear, together with the transmission, is packed into a very small, tight space. A pretty hostile environment for any power pack, really. If you've got an engine next to you, as the Routemaster had and the RT before it, the driver can hear what the engine's doing, and he can drive sensitively. When you've got the engine at the back, it's difficult to hear. You don't really get the feel of it, and it's easier to give the engine a bit more stick, frankly.
Here at London Transport's overhaul works, we can see another reason why the Fleet Line failed to find many friends.
This is the power unit. Here are the mechanics and the running gear of the good old Routemaster. This complete sub-chassis arrangement is connected to the rest of the bus by just 8 bolts. Once they're disconnected, the 2 halves of the bus, quite independently, can have their maintenance done easily and quickly. But not so the Fleet Line, because that is an integrated design. Only the wheels and the suspension can be easily removed from that, which means that the mechanical maintenance has to be done in situ underneath the bus. The servicing points are less accessible, the work is harder and unpopular, the maintenance team's regularly complaining of strained backs and stiff necks. What's more, the body panels on the Fleet Lines used to be tailor-made for each bus. The result, they weren't interchangeable from vehicle to vehicle. The outcome of all this is that the safety inspector is likely to demand that the next inspection and check on a Fleet Line is carried out sooner than on an older route master coming off the same maintenance line.
We have to cover breakdowns and the longer maintenance downtimes, about 15% spare vehicles with fleet lines. For route masters, we manage with between 5 and 8% spare vehicles.
But other operators manage with fleet line. Why can't London?
I'm not saying we can't manage with the fleet line. We can, and we do, and we have done for some years now. What we find, though, is that it is less reliable and it costs more to operate and to maintain. Other operators don't have the benefit of the route master, which is the basis for comparison. It's as simple as that.
But against that, a number of other operators are very, very satisfied indeed with the fleet line. One major operator, after intensive studies of all the competitive vehicles available, has just identified the fleet line as being the most economic and cheapest bus to run. So the London experience is unfortunate, but it's certainly not universal.
But there's another, much more fundamental problem with all modern buses in busy cities. Buses with doors. Dr. Cornby explains.
We have about 25,000 people getting on buses in Oxford Street alone in the course of an average evening peak. And they're getting on at only 32 stops. And those are the sort of conditions where one-man operation would be a joke. On the route master, for instance, people can get on and off the bus about 1 second per passenger. When you have a bus with doors, and when you have the driver taking the fares, it can take up to 3 to 5 seconds per passenger for people to get on the bus. And this clearly adds tremendously to the delays at the stops. In addition, of course, when you have a rear platform, people can and do jump on and off the bus at traffic lights, and in many parts of London, up to 20 or 30% of our passengers get on and off buses in this way. We don't really approve, but on the other hand, it does make the conditions a lot easier at the stops.
Actually, running a bus service might be enough to give anyone a headache. But 1980 has brought a new problem. Money is getting very tight. Quite apart from the general cutback in local authority spending, the government bus grant is being phased out. Once upon a time, this grant paid half the cost of buying new vehicles like these. By 1984, it will have gone altogether, and that for the manufacturers will be bad news indeed, because it will mean that demand for vehicles of this sort will fall even faster than it is at the moment. Today, manufacturers produce over 2,000 of these vehicles every year. It's estimated that by the mid-80s, that will have fallen to something like 1,700. In other words, a reduction of about 20%. But the extraordinary thing is, as the market gets smaller, more and more manufacturers seem anxious to get into it.
This is Leyland's contender for the 80s. The Titan, a unique design because its body and chassis have to be built in one piece by Leyland. Put on the drawing board in 1972, Titan has now covered, both on the road and the workshop rig, more than 200,000 miles of testing. But Titan's sophisticated design seriously threatened Britain's independent bodybuilders. One of them took up the challenge and designed a complete new double-decker of its own. The contender, the Metro bus. Its manufacturer, Metro Camel Weyman. Based in Washwood Heath in Birmingham, Metro Camel has a long history in transport engineering. The company pioneered metal bodies for vehicles many years ago. But building an entire bus was a new venture. However, the company received help from an unlikely source. When Leyland moved fleetline production from Birmingham to Preston, the local bus builders either had to move to or change to making cars. Metro Camel found an experienced workforce, only too delighted to join a company which would allow them to continue building buses in Birmingham.
Leyland at that time started to be stimulated to bring Titan forward, and that meant that we had to move forward, and so our whole programme was compressed, and we developed the vehicle in something like 18 months from beginning to end. At the same time, we discussed with operators, instead of having this long 5 or 6 year development programme, we discussed with them that we would be able to put small batches of vehicles on the road. because we felt that this was the best way in which we could get experience of what can go wrong with a new vehicle and a new concept, if you like.
Metro's enterprise, for the moment, shows every sign of paying off. From a turnover of £9 million just 2 years ago, the company has reached £45 million this year. The workforce has been increased by 60%, and production capacity for the new bus has been doubled. So far, Metrobus has won 1,400 orders, most of them at the expense of Titan, almost all for the home market. Only 52 have been sold abroad. Does Peter Stedman have any fears about expanding so rapidly into a declining British market?
I don't think that the risk is that great. The UK market may go down by a small amount, say 10 or maybe 15% over the next couple of years, but that will eventually come back because the bus market is a continuing market. With the export side, I believe that they will be moving into the higher technology, they will require higher technology vehicles, and with the benefits that you're going to get from the long-term costs, that market will open up to us and fill all our capacity.
So how does Leyland feel about this challenge to its market supremacy?
From the point of view of a competitor appearing, we never expected anything else. And in fact, in many respects, it's to the advantage of Leyland, because where you are in a monopoly position, operators see only the faults in your vehicle. I think when they have a yardstick against which to compare our vehicles, I think the merits of our development program and the work we put into these new products will become very apparent.
It could, of course, work the other way round. It could have to put you on your toes as well.
Absolutely, and I don't think that's a bad thing. I think it probably already has done.
Even without Metrobus, Leyland had their own troubles. Park Royal, where the Titan's made, is closing because management and the workforce can't agree over pay and productivity. There was an abortive plan to move to Lowestoft, but now the first bus is expected off the production line in Workington by April 1981.
You know that sales of Titan have been lost to West Midlands, possibly to Manchester, certainly to London, because of the production difficulties.
Yes.
Is there a danger that customer loyalty will switch to Metro as a result of that?
If we did nothing about it, we would of course lose sales, but we've done a great deal to recover the situation, and I'm fairly confident we won't have any more, from the point of view of the labour force, self-inflicted wounds as we had at Park Royal. And I think, in fact, the commitment we've shown to our customers in reinstating the Titan and the other actions we're taking with the other new products will be appreciated. I have no doubt at all about that.
It's very difficult to draw a firm judgment about these buses after a little over 12 months in service. What I think we can say is that both are basically sound, well-engineered buses and are going to give us better performance than the fleet line, and are going to be easier to maintain, and are going to be more reliable too. Each bus has got its strengths and its weaknesses. I would say the Titan is probably a better engineered bus. It's had a longer development period, but the earlier Titans, they weren't manufactured as well as the Metrobuses, quite honestly, though I think they're now being made up to standard now. The Metrobus is, in a sense, more flexible. The operator can specify more of the kind of units and engineering facilities that he wants on the vehicle. But these are fairly small things. We're getting good service from both of them, and we expect to for the rest of the replacement programme that we're engaged on now, which takes us to 1985.
While the Titan and the Metrobus were fighting it out, other smaller manufacturers jumped in. First, there was Ailsa Volvo, 95% British in spite of its name. Then Hester Dennis, and finally Foden. South Yorkshire has been testing them all. Controller of Engineering, Bill Kirkland.
Well, during the last few years, we've run a series of tests, and one we ran on Route 51. The only reason I say that, everyone recognises the Route 51 tests. And we ran 5 different types of vehicles during that period. We ran the Titan, the British Leyland Titan, the Metrobus, the Ailsa, the Foden. I've left one out, haven't I?
You've left out Dennis.
I've left out Dennis. How remiss of me, yes.
And who won the test then?
Dennis.
Why was that?
The vehicle that we ran during that test proved reliable. It proved economic. With our size of purchasing orders, we find that company the size of Dennis is probably more willing to accommodate us with respect to specific requirements. The Sheffield area is very severe, the operation is very severe, but we feel we have a specific need. Now, we can get that need met easily, more easily I should say, through a company the size of Dennis.
In fact, South Yorkshire has recently ordered 144 of these Dennis Dominators. Operators might welcome today's range of buses, but a former Leyland bus chief, now with London Transport, believes it could damage our bus industry. Marcus Smith.
This must be a major area of concern. It's difficult to believe there is room for them all. The numbers that they can produce are almost reducing their industries to a cottage level. And this, surely in the long run, can't be good for either the manufacturing or the operating industry. It must eventually reduce the amount of money that is put into development programs, and I would have thought in the long run undermine our strength in export markets.
There's another competitor in this overcrowded, threatened market, and it's not even British. This double-decker chassis is Swedish. It was revealed earlier this year when Scania invited 50 British operators to a special preview in a Midlands hotel. Sweden only uses single-deckers on its own roads, so Scania are breaking 2 export rules by coming to Britain. They're challenging on a home market, and they're exporting without a strong home base. They're aiming at a modest 10% of our market, knowing that if they can sell in the home of the double-decker, it'll be so much easier to convince other countries with bigger orders to buy Swedish.
There's another bloody wheel.
What's the valve?
What does the red valve do? Switch off the hydraulic.
Presumably that's a monitoring valve of some description.
That's a temperature sensor. Before going too deep into these things...
In the British market, the bus will be cheap. Unrealistically cheap, according to some bus buyers here, though Scania deny they're trying to sell a loss leader. They focused on the technical advantages during the standard audio-visual presentation. But would the sceptical customers be swayed by the promise of fuel economy, reliability, low price, comfort, and a super silent ride? And do they think that British buses aren't good enough?
I would say basically that British buses are good enough. At the moment we're having problems obtaining the one we'd really like, but I think we can put pressure, perhaps by using the continental imports to gee our people along.
In what way would importing foreign buses gee up the British manufacturer?
I think in our particular case we would only ever initially take a proving quantity. That's double-edged. It proves the product to see whether you'll take it in the long term, but it also indicates to the British manufacturer that he could be losing his market unless he gets a move on, and that's when he'll come and talk to you and perhaps make concessions and give you a little bit nearer that which you require.
Yes, what is the bus that you can't get your hands on?
Well, at the moment I would say it's the Titan.
Do you think that the rest of the world is going to demand more and more double-decker buses in the future?
I think not only double-deckers. In general, it is an upward trend for the bus industry.
Why is that?
Fuel saving, it's an economic way of transporting people. And I think we all have to consider to step more frequent into the bus.
So they invited the British buyers to step more frequently into Swedish buses, offering the promise that the bodies would be built in Britain. George Alcock of East Lancs Coach Builders will be bodying the first Scania buses.
Well, one of the basic reasons we need foreign buses in Britain is that there is 6 independent bodybuilders who require a constant supply of chassis. And in the mid-70s, this supply of chassis was interrupted by Leyland due to movement of factories from the Midlands to Lancashire. And then there was a proposal that all the bodies should be built by the Leyland Group, which left probably 7 independent bodybuilders without a chassis to mount on. So we encouraged Dennis, Guildford, Holden, from Sandbach, even the Volvo Ailsa combination, to build a chassis to meet the UK requirements. So the influx of new chassis and even foreign chassis stems from this date.
Fine for the bodybuilders, but a foreign invasion could threaten our own bus manufacturers. It's even been suggested that one or more might fold. I asked Scania's marketing director what he felt about that.
No comments.
And if the Swedes are coming, the Germans are already here. Only a token presence perhaps, but this bendy bus, currently on proving trials in Sheffield, may only be the start of a Bavarian double-decker invasion.
The British double-deck market is the biggest in the world, by far. I would certainly love to sell double-deck buses here. That's what I'm paid for.
But why come to Britain when demand in this country is falling?
The cost of individual transport by a saloon car is going up enormously, and more people find it more economically to use public transport, and that is bus, lots of ways.
That may be true
so
in Europe.
It must, well, unless you...
There are those who say it just isn't happening in Britain.
Well, unless you get very cheap petrol, which I can't see, it must be true in Britain as well. I think you cut down your railway facilities. So if you are cutting down your bus facilities, what's the public doing?
So you're saying those who are predicting a decline have got it wrong?
I think definitely they have got it wrong.
How much extra effort would MAN have to make to develop a double-decker for Britain?
It takes roughly 30,000 design hours for a new bus or adopted bus. If we calculate the design hour by £15, you can work out yourself how much it is.
That's about £500,000.
That's it.
Is it a risk you'd be prepared to take?
I think at the end of this year I could answer that question with a clear yes or no.
But whilst the foreigners only may be coming to Britain, they do most certainly have their eyes on our special position as the world's #1 exporter of double-deckers. Both the Swedes and the Germans see a potential sales explosion in the Middle East and the Far East, and both of those markets are traditionally monopolised by Britain. But the Union Jack has no intention of going down without a fight, and this is the vehicle which Leyland believes will be in the vanguard of that battle. It's codenamed B45, and this is its first ever appearance in public.
Though this new stablemate of the Titan won't officially be launched until the October Motor Show and doesn't go into production till December, B45 has already 200 firm orders.
It may look like a Titan, but it is different in several significant respects, and the most important of those is this bus has a chassis which can be independently bodied. And that means that foreign customers can use local labour to build bodies for British chassis ideally suited to their particular conditions, or to assemble British-produced knockdown kits. But in fact, the political importance of using local labour will appeal not only to foreign customers. Many of Leyland's potential buyers in the United Kingdom traditionally use local body shops. By 1985, as much as 2/3 of Leyland's home market could be buying B45s. So why, you may ask, with this versatile vehicle now firmly on the horizon, is Leyland bothering with the Titan at all?
The Titan is a very good bus, but the nature of its construction, it's built all as one vehicle in one factory, mean that there is a limit to how much you can vary the design.
How important is the success of B45 to the Leyland bus operation?
I would hesitate to go as far as to say fundamental, extremely important. It's very, very important to us indeed. We put a great deal of work into it, and we're very confident that it will do what's expected of it. But it's absolutely essential that it succeeds.
The reason why they have to get it right this time is that British bus manufacturers are realising that export markets don't just mean traditional ex-colonial countries anymore. Kuwait, for example, recently announced a £200 million public transport programme, which will include 1,500 double-deckers. Buses with an added attraction for Islamic countries, because women can travel to work on the top deck without having to encounter men. Meanwhile, the B-45, a contender for that market, is having its workout. But to export buses, we've always relied on a strong home base. How healthy is the industry today?
I think you could say there's a very clear case for a policy in the industry, involving government possibly, certainly the operators, to actively pursue the greater use of public transport, which would have obvious benefits to us as a manufacturer, but also it must be in the national interest. If you take the risks in this business, in the extreme case, if for any reason the operators ceased ordering for, say, a period of a year, that could do irreparable damage to the UK industry and obviously ruin our export prospects.
Today we have 90% of double-decker sales abroad. But will we be able to hang on to those, let alone win new markets, at a time when foreign competition's getting stronger? The biggest of the potential new markets could offer sales of 500,000 buses. So it was reassuring when earlier this year a delegation from that country arrived in London with a query. Could Britain's tall buses really be stable? And it was experts from the People's Republic of China who wanted proof that our double-deckers could tilt without falling over. This bus tilted 35 degrees and it still didn't fall over. So we satisfied them over that. But when the large new orders are placed, will British bus manufacturers be toppled over then by foreign competition? Or will we be in good shape to defend our position as pioneer and voice of experience in the world of double-deckers?
Hold very tight, please. I've got the red I've requested, although it was the ride, so she can shout, "Get out of it, Bethel, right up inside!" When you are lost in London and you don't know where you are, you'll hear my voice a-calling, I'll further down the car, and very soon you'll find yourself inside the terminus, in a London Transport diesel engine, nice and horsepower omnibus. We don't ask much for wages, we only want fair shares, so come down all the stages and stick up all the fares. If tickets cost £1 apiece, why should you make a fuss? It's worth it just to ride inside the 30-foot long by 8-foot wide, inside that monarch off the road, observer of the highway code, that big six-wheeler, scarlet painted London Transport diesel engine, nice and horsepower omnibus. Hold very tight, please.